so Magnitude Instruments is a company that I started with two now former students. We got started 1 year ago in November of 2018. And I'm going to describe some of the process that led to that, and highlight some of the resources that are available to Penn State researchers to aid that process. Because I'm hoping to make this make the process a little more transparent for you through this discussion. I'll begin on the slides. Here are most of the members of the team. Eric Kinahan is graduated with his PhD in August of this year. He has been working to get the company started and is now full-time with Magnitude. We were incredibly fortunate to benefit from some networking. We started, we got involved with the Tech Accelerator through Ben Franklin, and had one of our business coaches is Scott Johnson, who is not here. Scott got us connected with two of his former business partners, Ted Grafe and Eric Klein, who brought engineering and management experience to our team. Chris Grieco is also a former student. He's been involved in the software development. The company got started, so we learned at the Venture Capital and IP conference that saying you're cash positive in the first year gets people excited. So we've got about $400,000 in revenue this year, and are looking to, I think we'll triple that next year. That will continue to grow. We expect that to be so, and we're also diversifying what we're making, so that we actually manufacture materials and instruments in State College in the incubator space in the Technology Center. We got started because I wrote a grant to the Department of Energy to do something which turned out to not be possible with the tools we had at hand. And program manager was very adamant that he wanted us to do what I had proposed to do. And so I learned early on the importance of bringing people onto your team who are smarter than you are. And so I'm fortunate to have done that. Eric and Chris are those guys that are smarter than I am. And they were tasked with solving this problem. The problem was we were brief foray into spectroscopy. We were trying to develop an ultra-fast photocurrent detected spectroscopy that was motivated by prior work in the field, which we learned was actually just subject to artifacts. The excitement was about artifacts. So we sought to overcome this problem by changing the conditions of the experiment, and we ended up extrapolating to zero signal, which if you're making a measurement, having zero signal is a bad place to be. And so the students were tasked with finding some clever ways to measure and subtract noise. And they stumbled on something which works a lot like noise-canceling headphones do. The result was just, don't worry about what these things, these are called spectra on the slide here. And there's a comparison on the left was the prior state of the art, which was our state of the art. And the one on the right is the new thing that led us to start Magnitude Instruments. And the point was that we could do it much better and much faster than prior capability. And you do it by, we did it by measuring and subtracting the noise rather than just making the signal bigger. That has a number of advantages that we realized. It takes an instrument which occupies an entire room with a dedicated control system and moves it to something which sits on a bench that you can take to an ACS meeting in San Diego and get a picture with the mole. And we're working on the regulatory constraints to have a functioning instrument at the Philadelphia meeting, ACS meeting. We're still trying to figure out how to run a class 4 laser in the hall, the But anyway, that'll be the first time that's ever been done. They actually move a functioning ultra-fast transient absorption system, put it into a crate and ship it and have it work on the floor. The reason that's exciting is it enables a number of things, okay? And for me to describe what you can do with that would be a little bit like trying to make a list of cars you can fix with a set of imperial and metric wrenches. It was every car you could ever fix any car available with such wrenches. Spectroscopy is a tool that enables you to do stuff. It's a connection between the molecular structure, which you cannot see, and an observable, which you can make, right? And so an example here, just to give you a little, why we and others are interested in this, is with 100-fold higher sensitivity, which is what we stumbled on, you can either make a measurement really fast and efficiently, and a number of customers are interested in that, or you can enter a new space that was not approachable by your technique prior. And that's what I'm illustrating here, which is related to catalysis, where catalysis is basically you have some kind of stuff that makes a reaction go faster or more under milder conditions, or maybe more selective. And so a lot of interest in replacing platinum with earth-abundant materials, and so we're working on using the technique to make such measurements with new catalysts under operating conditions, where you're basically making measurements on surfaces, and you just could not make that measurement before because there's not enough surface. We can now do that. My group is benefiting from this, but a lot of our customers are actually interested in this kind of capability. Okay. Now, what that does is it allows us to take something which was very expensive and required a dedicated staff member and dedicated facility, and moves it to something which sits on a bench and anywhere you like. And so the process that we undertook to do this, we were very hesitant entrepreneurs. We recognized we could do some things better. And we wrote a lab bench to commercialization grant, which is a joint between the Research Foundation and the College of Science. We got paired with Steve Carpenter was sort of faculty mentor of some MBA students that were paired with us to establish how you could start a company. And Steve said something to us that was very informative. He said, we had intended to basically patent the stuff and license it. And he said, well, if you can reduce it to practice, actually demonstrate that you can make a thing and sell it, that patents become much more valuable. Okay, well, I don't know how to start a company, but that's interesting information. And then with that grant, we hypothesized we could make this technology better. We did. I remember a conversation with Eric about 2 years ago, and he says, John, you're not going to believe this, and I didn't, but it turned out to be true. We could make this measurement much better, and that's what convinced us that it was time to start a company, because we realized that we were really lousy business people. And so if we were going to do this, it needed to be something that would sell itself, that we would just say, we've done this, and people would want to buy it. And so when you have 100-fold reduction, improvement in performance, and 4-fold reduction in cost, and 4-fold reduction in size, then that gets people excited. And so that was sort of our value proposition. We're starting to sell to people like me, and so I knew the customer, and so that's very helpful. Now, I want to highlight 2 things that I learned from Tom Maluk. Tom Maluk was a faculty member here before he was recruited away to UPenn because his family moved to Philadelphia. And he started a company, had some experience. And he says, John, if you're going to start a company, you first have to make something that people want to buy. Which sounds super obvious, but it isn't, right? If you have a widget that you've developed in your lab, which is really cool, and you think it's cool, but no one else understands what it's for, to be used, or wants it, then you may have a cool technology you can patent, but if nobody wants to buy it, you don't have a company. You need people to actually want to buy your stuff. And then you need to work out the financing so they can do it. They can actually buy it. And for us, that was pretty easy. We are fortunate to have people who are willing to give us half the money up front so we can make the thing and deliver it. So that makes the cash flow a lot easier to handle. It does require a good bit of interest on their part to do that. And so we were fortunate to do that. One of the things I wanted to, I gave a version of this talk for Startup Week in May, actually April. And I gave it to my quantum mechanics class, mostly junior, senior chemical engineers. Significant entrepreneurial interest, I learned. I intended that it would be 20 minutes and then we'd move on to lecture material. But they had questions for the whole time. So I was really happy to see that level of interest. But one of the questions was, how do you know when you should do something? Like, I have ideas, I have a widget, but how do I know when I start a company? And so we learned from Matt the idea of a value proposition. We were totally ignorant of anything related to business when we got started. What we found was that there is, I found the ecosystem here in terms of helping us understand the process of starting a business, giving us resources to actually know what to do next. That was very fruitful here. And Matt actually was on the, I'm forgetting what the board is in the College of Science, but Matt was Technology Advisory Board. And he understood that we were basically taking concepts that were developed in the telecom industry some time ago and transferring them to spectroscopy. That's basically what we were doing. And you got excited about that. And that was very, very helpful for us. We understood from Matt, you need a value proposition. This is the thing. You need, first of all, something that people want to buy. And inherent in that is a value proposition, but most customers that I deal with don't understand value propositions and don't really care. They want to know what your thing can do to help them enable them to do what they want to do better, faster, or new capability. But if you're talking to people that deal with money, you need a value proposition. And so we learned to articulate that. And so you need a compelling idea that you can get other people excited about. And the other thing that we learned is that it's okay to get started without having any idea of what to do, how to actually start a company. I remember in those meetings with Steve, I'd say, is there like a flow chart? Is there something you can just like do this and then do this and then do this to start a company? And it kind of hemmed and hawed and like, well, yeah, kind of. But I realized the reason that there's not such a flow chart is partly because you have to understand your customer. You need to make something they want to buy, right? You have to understand what they want. And there are flow charts for that, of course. But the process of learning what it takes to start a company is kind of an organic thing, and it's based a lot on relationship. I'm sure the term network was said many times. I had to miss the panel because I was teaching. But the importance of finding people that can complement your skills and can get you connected to people who know what to do next. This is of the utmost importance in trying to start a venture. Fortunately, in my experience, there are a lot of people who are interested in helping us start companies and commercialize. I mean, I mentioned lab-based commercialization, which Andy helped us start. He just kind of get us connected with Andy Stevenson, and he helped design this structure where we got paired with the business team. Okay, we began to get connected to people who knew more about it than we did, And then we got connected. Matt actually got us into the Techcelerator. We met Matt through the lab bench. Matt got us connected to the Techcelerator, got connected to Scott Johnson, got connected to business partners, other funding structure. We got the Jumpstart funding, which is the second stage of lab bench funds, essentially. Also pitched to Ben Franklin, got some funds just to help with cash flow during the beginning stages. And so what I want to emphasize, if you're thinking about, what do I, when would I start a company? I want you, or commercialize something, I want you to realize that if you've got a good idea, that I have something in my hand that people want, or I can make something that people want, just start asking questions. And there are people here who want to help you and have the resources and understanding to do that. And so I just want to encourage you there. This is the thing I have to say is wonderful. Actually, this structure is beautiful. Every talk I give, right, scientific talk, I'm presenting research that I did, what my students did, with equipment very similar to what my company sells. And I'm required by Penn State to make the statement that I have a conflict of interest, that I have a company that makes instruments that sell, that we sell instruments that make the measurements that I just described. In every other context, that would be called an infomercial. But in our enterprise, it's a conflict of interest statement. And so I don't say that when I'm talking. I won't say it to you, but I just acknowledge that conflict of interest. So as Matt mentioned, we haven't taken funds from 1855 Capital. Because we had the grant from the Department of Energy, we could develop the technology to a very high level from federal funds. We patented, of course. That patent belongs to Penn State, as required by the Bayh-Dole Act, and we negotiated the license. And then we were able, because we had the technology to a very high level of readiness, we could then use the Jumpstart funds and Ben Franklin funds to basically package it. And so we have, and with engineering help from our business partners, we were able to offer an instrument that looks like a major instrument manufacturer made it. And so this is all coming from the ecosystem that we have here. So I just want to pause, stop, and ask if there are any questions I can answer. Yeah.
If it's 100 times faster and 4 times smaller, are you concerned that you're not charging enough for it? Does it also have to be 4 times cheaper?
Good question. I like that one.
Yeah, we've been asked that many times. So we, our pricing, the question was if we're 100 times more sensitive and smaller, and faster, better, faster, cheaper, why are we charging less? Okay. And the short version is that the thing that we're comparable to costs about $100,000. So we are sort of the iPhone of these kinds of instruments. To use that thing that's $100,000, you need $1 million tool that it's tied to, which we don't need. That $1 million tool has other capabilities than our thing has. That if you want to have those capabilities, you still need the $1 million tool. And so that's the reason that we have priced it as we have. That is, we are diversifying, we're developing new products that are not connected, directly or comparable to this $100,000 thing. We will be very interested in discussions of how to price those.
How did you decide to make Eric the CEO and CTO instead of bringing in an outside CEO?
Yeah, how did we decide to make Eric? So that's a good question. So I'll tell you what we did. We went to, we actually participated in the Startup Leadership Network because we wanted to see whether the guys that Scott Johnson referred us to, Ted Grafe, Eric Klein, were they who we needed to bring on. We brought them on for equity because we had no money at the time. So we attended this, and we were just evaluating, okay, who were we meeting with? And we got a lot of interest in our stuff. And we realized that none of the people we were talking to had all of the skills that Ted and Eric Klein brought. Ted has an MBA as well as a mechanical engineering background. He was in a management role of all traffic solutions, which makes the little signs that tell you how fast you're going on the roadway. And so we knew that bringing Ted on at some point in a management role would be a good idea, but we couldn't afford that right now. Eric has a great business mind, actually, and from his family. And so we found just that it worked for him to be in that role, and he does not intend to be in that role forever. There will be a point when we need to think about how to scale up. We have a facility, as I mentioned, at the Technology Center, and we can probably make 20 to 30 of these a year there. And that's a substantial amount of money, but it's not the kind of money that we would probably ultimately be able to have. And we would need to scale this up. And at some point, we will have a management team change. We're not there yet, but we probably need to be thinking about it sooner than we realize. Andy.
Right now, you're selling to people like you and Tom Malone.
Yeah.
Have you thought about selling to introductory chemistry and physics courses and engineering courses? Not taking a student grade one or something of that sort that would increase your potential buyer group.
Yeah. So for the other side of the room, the question was: Are we considering products that might be at a lower price point that would be for essentially educational purposes in a classroom or laboratory setting? We are absolutely thinking about that. We are there are some the noise canceling technology allows us to use components that are much less expensive than prior state of the art. Where we are now is still above that. We need to hit about $100,000 for all but the most, I'm not quite sure what to say, elite undergraduate institutions, I guess. So we have some people interested in our instruments who are teaching laboratories, but it's not that many. We are working on developing instruments that would be at about half that cost, and we are interested in exploring that, yes. Absolutely. We're also interested in other adding capabilities that will significantly add, of course, to the price of the instruments.
Yeah, 4 times reduction is very good. Can you go 40 times reduction? Because then it may open up some really interesting sensor platforms on production lines.
Well, so the question is, with 4 times reduction in cost, can we go 40 times reduction in cost? Or
I'm also talking size.
Oh, size, yeah. Size, yes. Definitely. So one of the things that making a measurement really quickly enables you to do is real-time process monitoring. So we can now make transient absorption measurements, which used to take hours. We can now make them in seconds. And so you can design a system where if there's a process that requires that kind of observable, we can now make that measurement on the fly. And so we are absolutely thinking along these lines. And because they would tend to be focused on particular signals that you're going to measure, you can simplify the system substantially. So these are certainly things that we're thinking. There's a good bit of innovation required, and that we'll be doing that in the company through the tech center location. Yeah. We like Steve, we keep a clear delineation between research group and commercial activities. We do no commercial activities in my laboratory. We have now 2 spaces in the tech center that allow us to handle everything over there.
Do you do fabrication in-house, or do you partner with manufacturers?
Do we do fabrication in-house or partner with manufacturers? We do both. So we have components that fabricated with the fabricators are not in State College. We have one in York that we use. Just prior connections with people. We bring those in, and then we do the fabrication and assembly here. There's a substantial software and other kinds of equipment that we use as well. That's all done here, of course.
And I can attest that, remember the imperial wrench that you talked about before? Eric has that over there in the Innovation Park, and you can join Eric in assembling equipment. So the CEO puts them together.
Yeah, the CEO is currently putting them together.
What's your exit strategy?
What's our exit strategy? So that's a good question. There will be a point when we are not able to meet demand in our tech center facility, and we'll have to think about what we do at that point. We could either, depending upon interest, we know of instrument manufacturers that are interested in this capability, if we grow, we will actually shut them down in terms of those products that they make, because it's that much better. So one possibility is we reach that point and we sell. Alternatively, we raise the capital to grow the production so we can meet demand. And I imagine if we haven't accrued the funds to do that just from our customer money, then we would be talking with Matt to start that conversation. So that would be the other, and then that would essentially grow it to the point where the exit strategy would be pushed out, but then of course it would be a larger value at that point. So I don't know, but those are sort of the two things we're thinking about.
I'm sorry, John. If you note John's story, John and Eric's story, $75,000 to $100,000 you got sort of out of the community in terms of grants.
As almost $1 million out in grants.
With so then the research grants.
Oh yeah, some of the lab bench.
Yeah, yeah. But then the first thing they said is, I can find a market, I can find a customer. So their next act was to actually make a sale. And their first sale was profitable, and John figured out, cash up front, that works better too. So it was a whole set of things that allowed him to, where's the flow chart to start a company? But John's flow chart may not work for anybody else. John and Eric's flow chart may not work for anybody else. But it was the innovation that they had in finding sort of a market, an early market of entry that can really articulate and further refine the value proposition. It's really been well done by John and Eric. So really appreciate it, John.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.